So I'm doing something a little bit different today, and that is reviewing a perfume based on a decant that I have instead of a full bottle. Now, I know a lot of people feel that if you really love a perfume, you would have a full bottle of it, and that just shows your commitment to it. But I'm really getting over this feeling of having to own everything that I love, and I'm okay with just enjoying something and putting it on a wish list, like having it at the back of my mind that this is something that I would one day want to have, but not feeling like I have to jump on it and own it right away. And so Santal Majuscule by Serge Lutens is, a perfume that I have a decant of. I got a 5 ml. Someone sent it to me, and the bottle that I have it from is one of those bottles with the big long black label on it. So it is a newer formula. It's not an old formula, but I enjoyed wearing this perfume so much that I ran through the 5 ml quite quickly. That's how much I have left, and I got excited about it, and I want to review it while I still love it, while it's fresh in my head. And yeah, like one day probably I will own a bottle, but right now I'm just wearing this decant, and I'm trying to wear a bunch of other things too. But I wanted to talk about it while I'm really excited about it, instead of waiting until I get a bottle, if I even get a bottle. So Santal Majuscule is the brand's ode to Australian sandalwood. So if you're looking for a beautiful sandalwood fragrance, this is one to definitely try. It's a little bit of a simplistic rose sandalwood perfume, and the thing that gets talked about the most, I think, is that it has a cocoa note in it. And so people often bring that up and can smell it to varying degrees. But instead of making this into a gourmand fragrance, the cocoa actually serves to add more texture to the scent. So when you have that rose and sandalwood, the cocoa gives it kind of like a suede feel. It just makes it feel soft and buttery instead of maybe harsh or too sharp, the way that rose might be or sandalwood might be. The rose in this is really, really beautiful. It is almost honeyed and definitely mouth-watering, and it just is a realistic rose, but in the way that candied rose would be. And that's why I say that it's honeyed. Like, it's not a sugar rose, there's no vanilla in this, but there is a sweetness to the rose that makes it appealing and makes it feel a little bit more gourmand than rose might be otherwise. The reason that I really love this perfume is because of that rose, but also because of the dry down, which is a creamy, warm, dry sandalwood. And in my mind, it is very much a realistic sandalwood. The reason is because when I was younger, I used to go to family vacations in India with my parents, and on our way back home, we used to stop into this place called Cottage Emporium in New Delhi, which is a place run by the government, and they sell handiworks, basically. It is a cottage industry, so it's handiworks made by artisans all over the country, and they're sold to tourists or whoever wants to buy them. They're very, very reasonably priced, and the goal is to pay the artisans directly. And so it's a really interesting place to visit. If you ever go to India, I highly recommend it. But obviously one whole section is dedicated to sandalwood and sandalwood crafts, and there's tables, there's little stools, there's of course pencil case holders and paperweights and things like that. There's little carvings and maybe photo frames, and they're all carved out of sandalwood. And so as you walk through that area, you get that smell of beautiful dry sandalwood in the air. And Santal Majuscule really brought back that memory for me. When I tried this perfume on, I could smell the beautiful rose, I could smell the sandalwood, but then later as it dried down, I kept coming back to smell my hand where I had sprayed it, and it just smelled so gorgeous and reminded me of that. And I know people are going to say that maybe the people that ran the Cottage Emporium sprayed a artificial sandalwood fragrance in the air. That might be true. They might have sprayed it on the, you know, carvings and things that they were selling. But all these years later, when you go back and smell or look at those handicrafts, you can still smell that sandalwood fragrance. So it stayed in there and the wood is itself fragrant. They never advertise it as Mysore sandalwood or Australian sandalwood. They just have a sign that says sandalwood, and the smell is really very, very similar to the sandalwood smell that's in this perfume, and it's absolutely gorgeous. I know there's also a lot of conjecture about what they've used to create the sandalwood smell. The brand doesn't say that there's a certain percentage of sandalwood in here. What they simply say is this is an ode to sandalwood, and so sure, maybe it could have a whole bunch of different synthetics and some natural sandalwood to create that same smell. I mean, Australian sandalwood is not illegal to use, so they might have created that with the Australian sandalwood. But in the end, I almost feel like talking about all of that takes away from enjoying the fragrance for what it is. And if you are interested in a rose sandalwood perfume that is a little bit old school, it's definitely, you know, that rose sandalwood combination is kind of classic in Indian perfumery, Middle Eastern perfumery, and you can get so many different variations of it. But if you're interested in a kind of simplistic and pleasant and very wearable rose sandalwood perfume that really dries down to being mostly sandalwood and not as much rose, then definitely go to your Serge Lutens counter and sample Santal Majuscule, because it just ticks all those sandalwood boxes for me, where I get that beautiful memory of, you know, smelling that Indian sandalwood. It's just really well done, and I love enjoying it for what it is. The rose in it is what really projects right away when you spray this perfume. It has quite a bit of projection and it will fill the room. But the sandalwood is definitely quieter. It sticks to your skin a lot more. Longevity is amazing with this perfume. You can definitely get 6 to 8 hours of wear, especially if you're, you know, just wearing it for yourself. You will be able to smell it throughout the day, which I think is great. Sillage is not as much. I think a lot of the Serge Lutens fragrances that I have and that I've tried stay closer to the skin, especially after 3 or 4 hours. And you can only really smell them in a more intimate kind of setting, which I think is okay. But really beautiful scent, really, really well done. And I hope that anyone that's interested in sandalwood gets to try it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.